Body can maintain it on its own if we don't disturb its circadian rhythm and we maintain our body well. But in modern times, we are not in acute stresses anymore. We are having multiple spikes of cortisol due to chronic stresses. When body is exposed to high cortisol levels for long times, the face is more moon-shaped. There is something called buffalo hump, where there is accumulation of fat around the neck region. Modern lifestyle is not at all conducive to today's cortisol levels. It's really a very sad question, or it's very sad to even think of reducing cortisol level because we all need adequate levels of cortisol. But of course, the levels vary throughout the day changes. Throughout our circadian rhythm, the cortisol is supposed to rise in the morning and the levels fall down as we go to bed. But it doesn't happen very abruptly. As we wake up, within 30 minutes to 1 hour after waking up, we have something called cortisol awakening response. So if our sleep has been good, our stress has been managed well, and we are not eating too late in the night before the sleep, we should ideally have at least 10 to 20 microgram per deciliter release of cortisol in the morning during cortisol awakening response time. By the evening around 4 to 6 p.m., they fall down anywhere between 8 to 10 microgram or even up to 6. By the time we plan to go to bed, before hitting the bed for sleep, the levels should fall below 5 microgram per deciliter. This is the normal variation of cortisol throughout the day. So we have to maintain these levels to function adequately, because cortisol is needed for multiple functions in the body: to maintain immune system, to maintain blood glucose levels, to maintain blood pressure levels. We need cortisol. Cortisol is a steroid hormone. It is released by adrenals, which are endocrine organs in the body. But they're not just released like that. It is influenced by multiple factors. We have something called hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, where hypothalamus releases a hormone which acts on pituitary. Pituitary releases something called ACTH, which stimulates adrenals to release cortisol. So, for the cortisol to be released, HPA axis should be aligning and should be in sync. If there is any problem at any levels, we develop abnormal cortisol levels. Either we have hypercortisolism, which means high circulating levels of cortisol in the blood, or hypocortisolism, which is low circulating levels of cortisol in the blood. Cortisol is definitely important along with other hormones. When we specifically speak about this hormone, as we age, the number of cortisol receptors decrease in the peripheral organs. So that is how the cortisol levels also fall down as we age, and the number of receptors also fall down. This is one aspect about how cortisol is synced with aging. Now, cortisol is also very famously known as stress hormone because it can help body adapt or respond to the stresses that we have in life, either chronic or acute. Cortisol will help us moderate the stress. Nowadays, we get to hear about serum cortisol a lot. It's not like it's discovered recently. It has been there since many years. It is in fact one of the hormones which is released in the body. As such, there are various other hormones like DHA, estrogen, progesterone, so and so. Cortisol also is important along with other hormones. All the hormones, they are very interconnected. If one is not functioning well or is in imbalance, it will also affect other hormones. It's not like cortisol works very independently and whatever happens in adrenal system will happen very independently. Adrenals are linked to hypothalamus, linked to pituitary. How cortisol behaves in the body is linked to liver, it is linked to thyroid and your pancreas. So all the systems are interconnected. So we should not alone speak about a single hormone is what I feel. Okay, how does cortisol influence other hormones or other hormones influence cortisol? So we'll take it one by one. Suppose take a person with liver dysfunction. If a person is having a liver dysfunction or liver is not functioning adequately, then either it is not metabolizing cortisol well, so you end up with higher cortisol levels, though your body produces normal levels of cortisol. So your metabolites are not excreted. In the same way, when it is over-functioning, your cortisol is broken down and excreted way more quickly than is needed, though the cortisol release is normal. So that's how liver plays a role. Same time, if you think about bile acids, bile salts, gallbladder, when it's not functioning well, or you have bile duct obstruction, then you don't get adequate enzymes or bile acids to act upon, and that will also dampen your cortisol metabolism. Same way, if you think about hyperthyroidism, where thyroid is producing more thyroid hormone, we know thyroid hormone increases metabolism. So cortisol is broken down more quickly and you have less cortisol levels, though the body is releasing normally. Same thing with hypothyroidism. In hypothyroidism, metabolism is slowed down and you'll have higher cortisol levels, though body is releasing normally. So metabolism is very important part of everything. So it can change the way the hormones behave. It can change the way hormones circulate in the blood. So that's how liver, pancreas, thyroid is very much connected with hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. Body can maintain it on its own if we don't disturb its circadian rhythm and we maintain our body well. But there are some issues that happen when the levels are too high or when the levels are too low. Let's discuss about when the levels are too high, where we call it hypercortisolism. That means circulating free cortisol is high in the body. So when it happens, it can happen either due to endogenous reasons or exogenous reasons. What is exogenous reason? It could be because of taking glucocorticoids for some other disease. You're taking a treatment of glucocorticoids. So that can increase the blood cortisol levels, or endogenous reasons where there is a problem with either hypothalamus, pituitary or adrenals, and henceforth more cortisol is released in the body and there is high cortisol in the blood. Not just that, when a person has low functioning thyroid, they metabolize the cortisol very slowly. That can also keep your blood levels high. Or when the liver is not functioning adequately, then also cortisol levels can be on a little higher side. So it's not just about hypothalamus pituitary axis. It is also linked to pancreas, liver, and thyroid. So all these function together to maintain it in a healthy level. So yes, these are the different reasons why a person has high cortisol levels. When body is exposed to high cortisol levels for a long time, then this is what happens, called Cushing's syndrome, where the appearance of a person changes. The face is more moon-shaped, or there is something called buffalo hump, where there is accumulation of fat around the neck region. Very much weight that is gained around the abdomen area, especially around the mid portion. And also there is purple striae that we see on the skin sometimes. And also there's a risk of osteoporosis. There's low bone mineral density. These are the and also they suffer with high blood glucose problems, high blood pressure issues, and also changes in their electrolytes like sodium and potassium. These are the different changes that we see when the body is exposed to high cortisol levels for long term. Similarly, if a body has low cortisol levels, again the reasons are very different. We most commonly see low cortisol levels due to something called Addison's disease. That means your adrenal has a problem and it is not releasing enough cortisol into the bloodstream. If it is called primary if the problem is with adrenals. It is called secondary when the problem is with pituitary. It is tertiary if the problem is with hypothalamus. So if the person has Addison's disease, what happens? They have low blood glucose levels, that is, they may have risk of hypoglycemia. They have low blood pressure issues, risk of hypotension. Also, they have problems with sodium and potassium maintenance. And also they have fatigue, they have dizziness. These are the different problems that we see with low cortisol levels. We need to understand physiologically, when does a body need higher cortisol levels? So the program is inbuilt within us. Body is so smart that it understands there are certain situations in life where the body needs to produce more cortisol so that we get prepared for the situation. So it could be surgeries, It could be some acute stress where there's some problem in the family, emotionally, psychologically, or loss of a family member. Or we have a project to submit, deadlines in today's time, multitasking, or notifications are always on the phone, where you are always in awakened state. That means you're ready to receive an alert. So when high alertness. In issues like this, if they are having only few times in life, the cortisol rises so that it will prepare your body to complete the task. During that time, we'll have high blood glucose levels, high blood pressure levels, so that you're very much awake, and it will suppress unimportant things like digestion, and it will suppress immune system during that time. So, and also it reduces inflammation. So this is okay when it happens few times in life, which are called acute stresses. But in modern times, we are not in acute stresses anymore. We are having multiple spikes of cortisol due to chronic stresses. And it is long term. If this is going on long term, if you are having cortisol spike multiple times in a day, which is not appropriate, then we'll end up with higher levels of cortisol. Body is supposed to shut down in the evening. That is when we are seeing higher levels of cortisol. That is because of most of the time because of the lifestyle where you're not exposing yourself to morning sunlight. The morning cortisol awakening response is not there. Or you're exposing yourself to too much blue light in the evenings when the body is supposed to slow down. Or you're eating heavy meals towards your bedtime, that will again raise insulin, and which will indirectly raise cortisol. So we are doing quite opposite things towards end of the day, and that is how the systems are going off balance. One of the reasons why these days we talk a lot about why having adequate sleep is important, because it is connected to cortisol. It's not like everybody goes through same cycles. We all go through 4 to 6 cycles of sleep, which is needed, at least 4 cycles. So what are these cycles? We have something called NREM and REM sleep. In NREM, we have different phases like light sleep and deep sleep. In phases of level 1, 2, 3, in level 1 and level 2, we are like very light sleep. We can be awakened easily. But when we go into this deep sleep part of NREM, which should happen within 2 to 3 hours of lying down, that is when your human growth hormone is active and your repair systems are going on. And after that, when we move into REM stage, rapid eye movement, that is when dreaming is happening. You're consolidating your memories, and more cognitive health is improving during that time. So this happens in cycles. At least 4 cycles is very important. And we need to be spending good time in deep sleep. And each cycle lasts for at least 90 minutes. So that's the reason it's important we reach this deep sleep early in our sleep time. So when this is happening right, cortisol also behaves well. But if you're hitting bed very late, or if you're having heavy meal, or if your heart rate is not dropping too early in your sleep time, the morning cortisol response is not adequate, or you're not seeing the morning sunlight. That cortisol spike which has to happen, which I said cortisol awakening response, that may not happen adequately. So if the next day actually happen the night before, how you prepare your body. So this is all very interconnected, and sleep, yes, does play a very important role in having right amount of cortisol in the body. So usually, depending on what kind of acute stress our body is going through, it could be a surgery, or it could be a financial loss, it could be a family member loss, depending on different things. For example, if you take surgery, you may again, your cortisol levels may come back to normal from anywhere from 2nd day to 5th day. But you're going through some emotional trigger, emotional stresses. It will take much more than that. But if it is something very smaller, like chronic low-dose stresses, like it could be reaching your targets, or meeting your goals, or multitasking, these kind of chronic, like you have it for so long, and these stresses are not very acute. short-term, low-dose stresses. But these are even more dangerous because by the time it tries to settle down, you're again giving it another stressor. So if you're giving it continuous chronic low dose stresses, it will cause a havoc in your hormonal system. Moon-shaped faces, and we call buffalo hump, which is fat accumulation around the neck region. And also the person develops abnormal weight gain, especially around the abdomen region. Along with that, there is thinning of the skin, so which can create something called purple striae on the skin. And a person might develop high blood pressure, high blood glucose levels, imbalance in the sodium and potassium. They have abnormal weight loss, they lose weight, they have muscle thinning, and also they have frequent attacks of hypoglycemia, hypotension, that means low blood pressure, low blood sugars, and dizziness and weakness, feeling fatigued. These are the common signs and symptoms we see with people with low cortisol levels. There are 3 types of tests that we can do for a person to evaluate in these scenarios. Number 1 is morning cortisol level, where we want to check the person's cortisol awakening response, where we do it in the morning. It's a blood test. But if you want to check the diurnal rhythm of the cortisol throughout the day at different points in time, then we check something called salivary cortisol levels. Then if you want to check cortisol metabolites, like cortisol is again metabolized in the body, then we do something called 24-hour urinary cortisol test, urinary cortisol and cortisol metabolites. So these are the 3 different types of tests that are available. So when we talk about optimal ranges, 1, cortisol awakening response. Normal range is anywhere between 10 to 20 microgram per deciliter. But optimally, it's better we have it on a higher side, like about 16 to 18 microgram per deciliter in the morning, within first 30 minutes or first 1 hour. And then in the evening, like around between 4 to 6 p.m., we should have below 10 microgram per deciliter, somewhere between 6 to 10. If we say optimal levels, it can be anywhere between 6 to 8. And then in the night, like when we are planning to sleep, so we should have it below 5 microgram per deciliter. So these are the optimal levels of cortisol in the blood. In today's time, why are we speaking so much about cortisol is because high cortisol levels are associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, and cancers, right? So, but lifestyle plays a very, very huge role, and modern lifestyle is not at all conducive to today's cortisol levels. So firstly, keeping diseases aside, of course, they need proper evaluation as to why a person is having high cortisol levels. That should be evaluated separately. When we think about how lifestyle can influence cortisol, then we need to have at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep, a very consistent sleep schedule, and morning avoid looking at your gadgets and have that bright sunlight in your eyes, which can influence cortisol awakening response because it is directly hitting your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is known to maintain your circadian rhythm. Because light influences a suprachiasmatic nucleus, it's very important for sunlight exposure in the morning, first 1 hour of waking up. And after that, your exercise also plays a role. A person who is very actively exercising on a very consistent day-to-day basis has lower cortisol levels in the evening, which is very important biomarker for longevity. And along with that, having healthy nutrition is very important. That is balanced diet. And stress. Chronic stresses should be managed well either through your yoga, meditation, mindfulness, or 3-minute work. We have something called 3-minute work exercise, where you write your life goals in 3 words, where you talk about your life in just 6 words, and you write down 3 words or 3 sentences why you're grateful for. So this kind of short exercises, or even spending time in the nature, or even doing some artwork, or exposing yourself to music, dance, or more movement, things like this will reduce stress, and we all need to work on stress reduction strategies. We all need to work on our sleep. We all need to work on our nutrition, movement, exercise. All these can balance our cortisol levels, and maintaining circadian rhythm is very important. Don't disturb your circadian rhythm. keep the body at ease, and it will take care of everything else. Not just a cortisol balance, to maintain a healthy hormonal balance, we need to be having a very diverse and balanced diet. We need to consume whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and fruits in very balanced proportions. And as much as possible, reduce refined sugars, refined flours, and trans fats, and very deep fried foods, and these kind of ready to go foods. If we are replacing and including more of whole grains, legumes, and nuts and seeds. So this is more balanced diet, and it will not just the cortisol; it will keep other hormones also in balance.